Close your eyes and travel back with me, far back through the mists of time, to an Ireland that exists now only in legend and in memory. This is an Ireland before the great migrations, before the arrival of Christianity, before the Romans ever set foot on these islands. This is the Ireland of the Tuatha De Danann, the Ireland where the veil between our world and the other world was gossamer thin, where gods walked among mortals, and where the western sea held mysteries that called to the brave and the curious alike. Imagine standing on the western coast of Ireland, where the land meets the Atlantic, in a collision of earth and water that has endured since before human memory began. The cliffs rise stark and dramatic from the churning waves below, their faces scarred by centuries of wind and salt spray. Green hills roll inland, spotted with ancient standing stones and burial mounds that the local people whisper about in hushed tones. These hills are not empty. The people believe, truly believe, that within these mounds dwell the Tuatha De Danann, the gods who once ruled this land before retreating into the hollow hills when the children of Meal took Ireland for themselves. The sky above is the changeable sky of the Atlantic coast, where clouds can roll in from the west in moments, transforming bright sunshine into mist so thick you cannot see your hand before your face. The air tastes of salt and carries the cries of seabirds wheeling overhead. In the distance, beyond the breaking waves, beyond the horizon where sky and sea become one, lies something the ancient Irish knew in their bones. Out there, somewhere in that vast expanse of grey-green water, lay the Otherworld. The Otherworld went by many names, and the Irish seemed to understand that it was not one single place, but rather a collection of realms, each with its own character and inhabitants. They called it Tir na Nog, the land of the young, where time moved differently and those who dwelled there never aged, never grew sick, never knew sorrow or death. They called it Mag Mel, the plain of delight, a place of eternal joy and abundance. They called it Tir Tairn Gair, the land of promise, a place of prophecy and possibility, and they called it Imain Ablach, the Isle of Apple Trees, where apple trees bore blossoms and fruit simultaneously, where the very air was sweet with the scent of those eternal flowers. These were not distant heavens, accessible only through death. No, the Celtic Otherworld was different from the afterlife concepts of other cultures. The Otherworld existed alongside the mortal world, separated not by death, but by a boundary that could be crossed by the living, if they were chosen, if they were brave enough to answer that call. The Otherworld could be reached by entering ancient burial mounds, those grass-covered hills that dotted the Irish landscape. And it could be reached by diving beneath the surface of certain lakes or pools where underwater passages led to realms of impossible beauty. And most commonly, most famously, it could be reached by sailing west out past the horizon into waters that were sometimes water and sometimes something else entirely. The people who lived in this ancient Ireland understood something that we have perhaps forgotten. They understood that the world was not a simple place of solid matter and straightforward cause and effect. They understood that there were thin places, liminal spaces, where the boundary between this world and the other became permeable. Dawn and dusk were such times. Samhain, the festival that marked the end of summer and the beginning of winter, was such a time when the doors between worlds stood open and beings from either side might cross over. And the Western Sea, that vast expanse of water that stretched beyond sight, was such a place, a threshold between the known and the unknown, between the mortal and the eternal. In those days, there lived a man named Bran, son of Feeble. We know little of Bran's lineage beyond his father's name, but we know he was a man of some standing, a leader, someone whose home was substantial enough to be called a fort. Bran was neither entirely king nor entirely common man, but somewhere in between, a chief perhaps, a warrior of reputation, a man who commanded respect among his people. One day, Bran was walking alone near his fort. This detail matters. He was alone, separated from his companions, walking in that solitary state where the mind wanders and the boundaries of self become uncertain. Perhaps he was thinking of nothing in particular, enjoying the simple pleasure of movement and fresh air. Perhaps he was troubled by something, seeking the clarity that sometimes comes from walking and thinking. We do not know. What we do know is that he heard music. The music was unlike anything he had heard before. It was not the music of harps played by human hands, not the songs sung at feasts, not the battle cries or the keening of mourners. This music was something else entirely, something that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, something that resonated not just in his ears, but in his chest, in his bones, in the very center of his being. It was beautiful beyond description, haunting, compelling, impossible to ignore. Bran tried to follow the sound, turning this way and that, but the music seemed to move with him, always just ahead, always just out of reach. The sweetness of it began to overwhelm him. His legs grew heavy, his vision began to blur. And then, quite suddenly, he found himself overcome with drowsiness so profound that he could not fight it. There, alone in the open air, Bran collapsed into sleep. When he woke, he found himself back near his fort with no memory of how he had returned there. Had he walked in his sleep? Had something carried him? He could not say, but there, lying on the ground beside him, was something that had definitely not been there before. It was a branch from an apple tree, but such a branch as he had never seen. It was silver, gleaming silver, and from this silver branch hung white blossoms that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The blossoms were so delicate, so perfect, that they hardly seemed real. They looked as though they had been crafted by some master artisan from silver and pearl and moonlight. Bran picked up the branch carefully, half expecting it to vanish like something from a dream, but it was solid in his hand, cool and smooth, and when he moved it slightly, the blossoms chimed together softly, making music that echoed faintly that haunting melody he had heard before falling asleep. He carried the branch back to his fort, holding it carefully, already sensing that this was no ordinary object, but something of great significance, perhaps great power. That evening, Bran sat in his hall surrounded by his household. The fire crackled in the central hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. His companions talked and laughed, sharing the news of the day, but Bran was quiet. The silver branch resting across his knees, his mind far away, still caught in the spell of that strange music. And then she appeared. One moment the hall contained only Bran and his household, familiar faces all. The next moment there was a woman standing before them, a woman none of them had seen enter, a woman unlike any they had ever seen before. She was beautiful, but it was not the beauty of mortal women. There was something about her that was not quite human, something in the way she stood, in the way the firelight seemed to both illuminate and pass through her, in the way she looked at them with eyes that were ancient and ageless at the same time. She did not speak a greeting, she did not introduce herself or explain her presence. Instead, she began to sing. Her voice was the voice that had called Bran to sleep, the voice behind the music that had haunted him. And the words she sang painted pictures more vivid than any artist could create, described a place more beautiful than any earthly paradise. She sang of an island far to the west, beyond the reach of ordinary mortals, beyond the horizon where the sun sets into the sea. She sang of Imain Ablach, the Isle of Apple Trees, where the trees bore fruit and blossoms together, where the apples gleamed like gold in eternal summer light. She sang of a land where there was no sickness, no aging, no sorrow, no death. She sang of a place where music filled the air, where every day was a feast, where the very stones of the shore were precious jewels, where the sea itself sparkled with impossible colours. There is a distant isle, she sang, around which seahorses glisten, a fair course against the white swelling surge. 4 pillars uphold it. A delight of the eyes, a glorious range, is the plain on which the hosts hold games. Coracle races against chariot in the plain south of Findargad. Pillars of white bronze beneath it, shining through aeons of beauty, a lovely land through the ages of the world, on which the many blossoms fall. The hall was utterly silent as she sang. Every person there was transfixed, caught in the spell of her voice, seeing in their minds the wonders she described. She sang of rivers that ran with wine and mead. She sang of horses that needed no bridle, so gentle and willing were they. She sang of women with voices like bells and laughter like music. She sang of warriors who knew no fear, who competed in games of skill without anger or violence. She sang of a place where the sun always shone but was never too hot, where gentle rain fell but never brought cold or gloom. Unknown is wailing or treachery, she continued, her voice rising and falling like waves on the shore. In the familiar cultivated land, nothing harsh or rough, but sweet music striking on the ear, without grief, without sorrow, without death, without any sickness, without weakness. That is the sign of Imain. Uncommon is an equal marvel. She sang of the sea journey itself, describing waters that were not like ordinary waters, waters through which one could see down to meadows of flowers swaying in currents that were like gentle breezes. She sang of meeting the god Manannán Maclear himself, the son of the sea, he who ruled these western waters and the islands within them. She sang of other islands along the way, each with its own wonders, each worth visiting, each a stepping stone to the greatest marvel of all, the island of women where she herself dwelt. As she sang, she walked slowly around the hall, and her eyes kept returning to Bran. It became clear that while she sang for all of them, she sang primarily for him. This invitation, this call to adventure, was meant for Bran, son of Feeble specifically. She was not just describing a place. She was offering him something, the chance to leave behind a mortal world with all its limitations and disappointments, the chance to sail beyond the horizon into wonder. Her final verses were a direct invitation, an offer that hung in the air like the last note of a song, resonating, demanding an answer. "I bring a branch of the apple tree," she sang, "from Ymain, from far away. It has blossoms on it, crystal brows with blossoms. Let Bran hear the sound of the branch in his boat, and he shall reach pleasant Moimel, the land of the living." And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. The hall erupted into confused voices, everyone talking at once, asking what they had seen, whether it had been real, who the woman was, what her words meant. But Bran sat silent, the silver branch still in his hands, and he knew with absolute certainty what he was going to do. He was going to sail west. The decision, once made, could not be unmade. Bran felt it settle into his bones with the weight of destiny, that peculiar sensation of stepping onto a path that had perhaps always been waiting for him. But knowing he would go and actually undertaking the voyage were two different matters. A journey into the unknown Western Ocean required preparation, required companions, required vessels sturdy enough to face whatever waters lay ahead. Bran did not command his people to join him. This was not a raid or a necessary military expedition. This was something else, a quest driven by vision and longing, and such quests can only be undertaken by those who choose freely. So Bran spoke to his warriors and his friends, describing the woman's song, describing the island she had sung of, and asking who among them would sail west with him to find it. In the end, 27 men stepped forward to join him. 27 besides Bran himself, making 28 in total, though some tellings of this tale say there were 3 times 9 companions, 27, with Bran making 28, and others say 29 or 30. The exact number varies with the telling, as numbers often do in these old stories, where the symbolic can matter more than the literal. What matters is that Bran was not alone. He had companions, brave men all. Men willing to leave behind everything they knew to chase a vision, to sail beyond maps and memory toward an island that might be paradise or might be nothing more than death in the cold Atlantic. They prepared 3 currachs for the journey. These were not the large Viking longships that would come to these waters in later centuries. Currachs were lighter vessels, boats made with a wooden frame covered with animal hides, waterproofed with tar or fat, flexible and surprisingly seaworthy despite their seemingly fragile construction. They could ride over waves rather than cutting through them, and they drew little water, making them perfect for navigating both open ocean and shallow coastal waters. Each currach could hold 9 or 10 men along with their supplies. The supplies themselves were modest: dried meat and fish, hard bread that would keep for weeks, skins full of water and mead. They could not carry enough food for a journey of indefinite length, which meant they were trusting, whether they fully realized it or not, that the Otherworld would provide, that the journey itself would be sustained by forces beyond the ordinary. They brought weapons, of course, because they were warriors, and going unarmed into unknown waters would have felt wrong, would have felt naked. But there was a strange quality to their preparation, a sense that normal rules might not apply where they were going, that swords and spears might matter less than courage and courtesy. The departure itself was witnessed by the entire community. This was not the sort of thing one could do quietly. The whole of Bran's household and many from the surrounding area came down to the shore to see them off, to say their farewells, to watch these brave or foolish men set out into the unknown. There were tears, certainly. Mothers wept for sons who might never return. Wives embraced husbands one last time. Children clung to fathers' legs, not fully understanding where they were going, but sensing the significance of the moment. And yet there was also a kind of celebration in the air, a strange joy mixed with the sorrow, because this was Ireland, and the Irish understood that the Otherworld was not death, not exactly. If these men reached the place the woman had sung of, they would not be dead. They would be somewhere, alive and well and happy in ways that mortal life did not allow. There was grief in the parting, but also a kind of vicarious excitement, a sense that these men were doing something important, something that would be remembered, something that would become a story told around fires for generations to come. Bran stood in his currach, the silver branch held high so all could see it. The blossoms caught the light gleaming, and a sigh went through the crowd at the beauty of it. Then Bran and his men took up their oars, and the 3 currachs slid into the water, pulling away from the shore with steady strokes. The people on the shore watched until the boats became small specks on the horizon, and then watched longer still, until they could see nothing but the empty line where sea met sky. And then they turned and went back to their lives, back to their fields and their fires, carrying with them the memory of this departure, this moment when ordinary men sailed beyond the ordinary world. For Bran and his companions, the rowing was familiar work at first. They knew these waters, or at least the waters near shore. They had fished here, had sailed along the coast, had learned to read the moods of the sea the way farmers learn to read the sky. But as they rowed further west, as the coastline of Ireland became a thin line and then vanished altogether behind them, they entered waters that were less familiar, and then waters that were not familiar at all. The Atlantic is not a gentle sea. Even on calm days, the swells can be enormous, lifting boats high and dropping them into troughs where the horizon disappears behind walls of water. Storms can appear with frightening speed, turning peaceful seas into chaos in a matter of minutes. And then there is the sheer emptiness of it. The way the water extends in every direction without landmark or reference point, the way the sky above becomes the only other thing in existence, until the world seems to consist of nothing but water and sky and the fragile vessel between them. But Bran and his men found something different as they rowed west. The waters they travelled did not behave quite like normal waters. Oh, there were waves, certainly, and the men had to row hard at times, fighting against currents and winds. But there was also something else, a quality to the water that was hard to describe, a sense that they were not just travelling across the surface of the ocean, but also travelling between worlds, crossing some invisible boundary with every stroke of the oars. They rowed for how long? Time became uncertain. They rowed until their arms ached and their hands blistered. They rowed through the day and rested at night, the curraghs tied together for safety, rocking on the gentle swells while they slept. Or told stories in low voices, not wanting to break the strange silence that surrounded them. They rowed through mist so thick they could barely see the other boats, even though they were tied together. They rowed through clear weather when the water was so transparent they could see deep below the surface, and what they saw there was not what they expected. Instead of the darkness of deep water, instead of the murky green or grey blue they were accustomed to, they saw light down there. They saw what looked like meadows, flowers swaying in the currents as though they were grass in a breeze. They saw what might have been animals moving in the depths, but animals like no creatures of the sea they had ever seen, graceful and strange and somehow friendly despite their strangeness. The men leaned over the sides of the curraghs, staring down into these impossible depths, and wondered what seas they sailed, what waters these were that looked like solid earth viewed from above. And then, on what might have been the second day or the 5th or the 10th of their journey, for time had become slippery and uncertain, they encountered something that made them understand they had truly left the world they knew behind. They saw a chariot approaching across the waves. At first, they thought they were seeing things, that the sun and the sea and the strangeness of their journey had affected their minds. But no, there it was, growing clearer as it approached. A chariot drawn by horses, moving across the surface of the water as though it were solid ground, sending up spray with each hoofbeat, but not sinking, not even slightly, the horses' legs driving powerfully, their manes flying in the wind, the chariot behind them solid and real and impossible. The man driving the chariot was impressive in a way that went beyond physical size or beauty. He radiated power, but it was a power that felt ancient and vast, like the power of the sea itself. As he drew closer, reining in his horses to match pace with the curraghs, Bran and his men could see him more clearly. He was neither young nor old, or perhaps he was both at once, his face containing aspects of youth and age simultaneously in a way that was disconcerting but not frightening. He wore clothes that shimmered with colours like the sea, greens and blues and greys that shifted as he moved. His hair seemed to hold water, droplets of seawater that never fell but clung there, catching the light. When he spoke, his voice was like the sound of waves on shore, rhythmic and eternal. "I am Manannán Maclair," he said, and the men in the curraghs knew the name even before he spoke it. Manannán, son of Lair, son of the sea itself, the god who ruled these waters, who governed the boundary between the mortal world and the otherworld, who was lord of the mystical islands that lay beyond the horizon. Manannán did not seem surprised to see them, did not ask where they were going or why. Instead, He spoke to them about the waters they travelled, and what he said made them see those waters with new eyes. "What seems to you a clear sea?" Manannán said, gesturing to the waters around them, "is to me a flowery plain. Where you see waves breaking, I see a meadow filled with blossoms. What you call depths are to me green fields. Where you see currents and tides, I see rivers flowing through grass." He spoke more, describing his kingdom, describing the nature of the otherworld waters, but his words were also a kind of prophecy. He spoke of things to come, of a child who would be born, of futures that would unfold in ways mysterious and important. His words wove together past and present and future in a tapestry that was hard to follow but felt significant, felt true in the way that prophecy feels true, even when it is not fully understood. And then, after speaking with them for a time that might have been moments or hours, Manannán gestured ahead, pointing toward the west. "Continue on your course," he said. "You will reach the island of joy first, but do not linger there. The place you seek, the island of women, lies beyond. Trust the journey. Trust the waters that carry you. You are already in the other world, though you may not fully realize it yet. You crossed the threshold when you lost sight of Ireland's shore, when you chose to keep rowing into the unknown. Everything from here forward is different from what you have known. Let go of your expectations. Let go of your fears. Sail on." With that, Manannán shook the reins, and his horses sprang forward, pulling the chariot swiftly across the waves, soon disappearing into the distance, leaving Bran and his men staring after him in wonder. They had met a god. They had spoken with Manannán MacLear himself, the Lord of the Western Sea. And if there had been any doubt in their minds about whether this journey was real, about whether the woman's song had been truth or delusion, that doubt was gone now. They were truly sailing into the other world. They were truly on their way to wonders beyond mortal comprehension. With renewed energy, almost with joy, they took up their oars again and continued west, toward whatever awaited them. The journey continued through waters that grew ever stranger and more beautiful. The sea around them shimmered with colours that had no names, hues that existed somewhere between blue and green and silver, shifting and changing with every movement of the waves. The air itself seemed to carry music, faint and distant, as though the wind passing over the water created melodies, or as though the water itself sang softly, constantly, a lullaby without words. The men had fallen into a rhythm with their rowing, a synchronization that required no thought, their oars dipping and pulling in perfect unison, propelling the currachs forward with steady, tireless strokes. They should have been exhausted. The journey had been long. Their arms should have been screaming with pain, their hands raw with blisters. But they felt none of that. There was a vitality in this air, in these waters, that sustained them beyond their normal endurance. They were not just rowing. They were being carried, drawn forward by something beyond their own power, pulled westward by the same force that had called Bran in the first place. Time had become meaningless. They could not have said how many days they had been travelling. The sun rose and set, but its passage seemed both faster and slower than normal, as though the usual laws governing day and night did not fully apply here. Sometimes they felt they had been rowing for weeks. Sometimes it seemed they had only just left Ireland's shore that morning. They stopped trying to track the days and simply rode, slept when they were tired, ate when they were hungry, and trusted the journey to take them where they needed to go. And then, rising from the mist ahead, they saw land. It appeared gradually, the way islands do when you approach them from the sea. First, just a darker line on the horizon, barely distinguishable from a cloud bank or a trick of the light, then slowly resolving into something solid, taking shape, becoming real. It was an island, green and welcoming, with gentle slopes rising from the shore, with trees whose leaves seemed to catch the light and hold it, glowing softly even though the sun was not directly on them. As they drew closer, they could see that the beach was smooth and golden, the kind of sand that looks soft as silk. The water near the shore was so clear they could see every stone on the bottom, every strand of seaweed swaying in the gentle current. And there were people on the shore, figures standing there watching their approach, waiting for them. The curraghs touched the beach with barely a whisper of sound, sliding up onto the sand with the last gentle push of the waves. Bran and his men climbed out, their legs unsteady after so long at sea, and stood looking at the people who had come to meet them, and immediately they knew something was unusual about this place, because the people on the shore were laughing. Not just smiling, not just happy, but actually laughing. A constant, joyous laughter that seemed to well up from deep inside them without reason or cause. They laughed as they stood there. They laughed as they gestured welcome to the newcomers. They laughed as they spoke, though their words were nearly incomprehensible through the laughter. It was not mocking laughter or cruel laughter. It was pure joy, pure delight, the kind of laughter that comes from happiness so complete that it cannot be contained. The inhabitants of this island seemed otherwise normal enough. They were dressed in simple but well-made clothes. They appeared healthy and hale. The island itself seemed prosperous and pleasant, with neat paths leading inland toward what looked like dwellings nestled among the trees. But the laughter, the constant ceaseless laughter, was unnerving despite its joy. There was something about it that made Bran uneasy, something excessive in that happiness, something that spoke of enchantment rather than natural contentment. He turned to his companions, and his uneasiness was reflected in their faces. They could feel it too. The pull of that laughter, the way it wanted to draw them in, to make them join in that endless mirth. It would be so easy to give in to it, to let go of whatever burden of seriousness and purpose they carried, to simply laugh and never stop laughing. "We need to know more about this place," Bran said, "but we should be cautious. This is the island of joy that Manannán spoke of, I think. He told us not to linger here." One of his companions, a young man named Nechtan mac Colbrain, stepped forward. Nechtan was brave, perhaps too brave, the kind of warrior who acted first and thought later. "I'll go," he said. "I'll speak with them, find out what this place is, whether it's safe for us to rest here before continuing our journey." Bran wanted to say no, wanted to keep all his men close, but he also knew they needed information. "Don't go far," he said. "Don't eat or drink anything they offer. Don't let them out of your sight. Learn what you can and come back quickly." Nechtan nodded and began walking up the beach toward the laughing people. They welcomed him with open arms, still laughing, and led him inland along one of those neat paths. Bran and the others watched him go, watched until he disappeared among the trees with the laughing people, their voices growing fainter with distance, but never quite fading entirely, that laughter seeming to echo from every direction, as though the island itself was laughing. They waited and waited. The sun moved across the sky, though how much time actually passed was hard to say. An hour, 2 hours. It felt much longer. The men grew restless, pacing the beach, glancing inland, wondering what was keeping Nechtan. Some of them wanted to go look for him, but Bran held them back. Some instinct telling him that sending more men would only result in more men lost. Finally, they saw movement among the trees, figures approaching. Their hearts lifted, thinking Nechtan was returning. But as the figures emerged onto the beach, their hearts sank again, because it was not Nechtan alone. It was Nechtan with several of the island's inhabitants, and Nechtan was laughing. He was laughing exactly as they were laughing. That same ceaseless, joyous, slightly unhinged laughter that characterized everyone on this island. He walked toward his companions, still laughing, and when Bran called out to him, asking him what he had learned, whether it was safe here, Nechtan only laughed in response. He did not seem to hear the questions. He did not seem to recognize his old companions at all. He simply stood there on the beach, surrounded by the laughing people, laughing along with them, lost in whatever enchantment held this place. Bran felt a chill run through him despite the warm air. This was powerful magic. To strip away someone's identity so quickly, to reduce a thinking, speaking warrior to nothing but laughter. This was the danger of the Otherworld that the old stories warned about, the sweetness that could trap you, the joy that could become a prison. Nechtan, he called again, putting all his authority into his voice. Nechtan McColbrain, come back to the boats, we're leaving. But Nechtan did not move. He stood there laughing, and the other laughing people gathered around him as though claiming him, as though he was already one of them and no longer one of Bran's companions. We have to get him, one of the other men said, starting forward, but Bran grabbed his arm, holding him back. No, Bran said, though it cost him to say it, we'll lose you too. Whatever magic holds him, it's strong. If we go into the island, we'll all become like that, trapped in endless laughter, forgetting ourselves, forgetting our quest. Nechtan made his choice when he went ashore. We cannot save him now. It was a hard decision. Perhaps the first truly hard decision of their journey. To leave a companion behind, to abandon him to enchantment, went against everything they believed in as warriors, as friends. But Bran knew with certainty that trying to rescue Nechtan would only result in more men being caught by the same spell. The Island of Joy would not release those it claimed so easily. Back to the Curraghs, Bran ordered. We leave now before this place claims anyone else. His men obeyed, though several of them looked back as they climbed into the boats, hoping to see Nechtan shake off the enchantment and run to join them. But he did not. He stood on the beach with the other laughing people, and his laughter followed them as they pushed off from shore, as they took up their oars and began rowing away from that dangerous paradise. For a long time they could hear that laughter drifting across the water, faint but persistent, a reminder of how close they had all come to being trapped, how the Otherworld's gifts could be curses in disguise. Joy was a wonderful thing, but joy without end, joy without purpose, joy that erased everything else. That was a kind of madness, a kind of death of the self. As the island of joy faded behind them, becoming just another shape in the mist, Bran held the silver branch tighter and thought about the woman who had given it to him. She had warned them in her way. Her song had described wonders, but she had also called them to keep going, to continue past lesser marvels to the greatest marvel of all, the island of women. Nechtan had stopped too soon, had been seduced by the first enchantment they encountered. They would not make that mistake again. Row on, Bran said to his companions, fewer now than when they had set out from Ireland's shore. Row on toward the true destination. We mourn Nechtan, but we honour him best by continuing the journey he helped to begin. Somewhere ahead lies the island of women, the place from the song, the place that calls us. We row on. And they did, pulling their oars through waters that sparkled and sang, leaving behind the island of joy and its endless laughter, pushing forward into the unknown west toward whatever awaited them. They rowed for what might have been days or weeks or months through seas that continued to shimmer with that strange, otherworldly quality. The loss of Nechtan hung heavy on their hearts, at first a shadow over their spirits, but gradually, imperceptibly, that grief began to fade. Not because they forgot him, but because these waters seemed to have a quality that eased pain, that made sorrow harder to hold on to. Whether this was blessing or curse they could not say, but they found themselves focusing more on the beauty around them and less on what they had lost. The sea itself seemed alive in ways that ordinary seas were not. Sometimes they saw creatures breaking the surface, but they were not like the dolphins or whales they knew from Irish waters. These creatures were sleeker, more graceful, their bodies seeming to be made of water itself, as though the sea had taken shape and decided to play alongside their boats for a while before melting back into the waves. Sometimes they saw birds overhead, but birds with plumage that shimmered with impossible colours, blues and greens and purples that seemed to glow from within. And then, after a time that could not be measured, they saw the island. This island was different from the island of joy. Where that first island had appeared suddenly out of mist, this one seemed to have been there all along, as though they were only just now able to see it, as though it had been waiting for them to be ready before revealing itself. It rose from the sea with gentle slopes, covered in green, so vivid it almost hurt to look at, a green that made Ireland's emerald hills seem dull by comparison. Trees grew there, and even from a distance the men could see that these trees bore both blossoms and fruit, just as the woman's song had described. Apple trees, they thought, though they were unlike any apple trees they had seen before, their branches heavy with white flowers and golden fruit simultaneously. The shore of this island was not sand, but smooth white stones that seemed to have been polished by centuries of gentle waves. The water near the shore was so clear and still that it looked like polished glass, reflecting the sky and the island perfectly, so that it was hard to tell where reality ended and reflection began. And on the shore, waiting for them as they approached, were women. They were beautiful, these women, but their beauty was not the common beauty of mortal women. They had something of the quality of the mysterious woman who had appeared in Bran's hall, that sense of being not quite human, not quite bound by the same laws that governed ordinary flesh and bone. They stood gracefully, wearing clothes that seemed to be made of light and air and colour, garments that moved in breezes that did not quite touch anything else. Their hair fell long and loose, ranging in colour from gold like ripe wheat to black like a raven's wing to red like copper and fire. As the curraghs touched the shore, the women came forward and their faces were welcoming, open, joyous in a way that was entirely different from the unsettling laughter of the island of joy. This was genuine welcome, the kind that makes a traveller feel that they have finally come home after a long journey. One woman stood slightly apart from the others, and it was clear she was their leader, their queen. She was neither young nor old, or perhaps she was eternally both, her face holding the freshness of youth and the wisdom of age simultaneously. Her hair was the colour of honey and sunlight woven together, and her eyes were the green of deep forests, ancient and knowing. When she looked at Bran, he felt as though she saw not just his physical form, but everything inside him, every hope and fear and dream. "Bran, son of Feeble," she said, and her voice was music itself, each syllable a note that resonated in his chest. "You have answered the call. You have sailed the Western Sea. You have passed the island of joy without being trapped by its enchantment. You are welcome here, in Emain Ablach, in Tir Nanog, in the land of women, in the place that has many names and is all of them at once. You and your companions are welcome here." She held out her hand, and in it was a ball of thread, but the thread gleamed silver, like the branch that had started all of this, like moonlight turned solid. "Take this," she said to Bran. "Catch it, and it will pull you safely to shore." Bran reached out and caught the ball of thread, and the moment his hand closed around it, he felt a gentle tug, irresistible but not forceful. The thread unwound from the ball, stretching between his hand and hers, and somehow that thread pulled the curragh smoothly toward the shore, drawing them in without need for rowing, without need for any effort on their part. It was magic, pure and simple, and Bran did not resist it. The men climbed from their boats onto the smooth white stones of the shore, and each was greeted by one of the women, who took their hands and spoke their names, though they had never been introduced. The women knew them, knew their names and their stories, as though they had been watching the journey all along, as though Bran and his companions were not strangers, but long expected guests finally arriving home. "Come," the queen said, still holding the silver thread that connected her hand to Bran's. "Come inland. There is food and drink, rest and music, everything you need. Time moves differently here. You may stay as long as you wish, and when you leave, no time will have passed in the world you came from. Or you may stay forever if that is your choice. Many have chosen to remain. This is Tir Nanog, the land of the young, where age and death have no dominion. You are safe here. You are home. They followed her inland, walking paths that seemed to appear beneath their feet and then fade behind them, as though the island created ways for them to walk and then erased those ways once they had passed. The landscape was breathtaking in its beauty. The apple trees they had seen from the sea were even more magnificent up close, their branches heavy with blossoms that smelled of honey and starlight, with fruit that gleamed like gold in the perpetual soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. There were other trees as well, trees bearing fruit and flowers that Bran could not name, plants that seemed to combine characteristics of different species in ways that should not have been possible but somehow were. Flowers grew in profusion, carpeting the ground in colours so vibrant they seemed almost to hum with intensity. Birds sang from the branches, but their songs were more complex and beautiful than any bird songs the men had ever heard. Harmonies that seemed to come from choirs of birds all singing together in perfect coordination. And the air itself was different here. It was warm but not hot, fresh but not cold, and it seemed to nourish them just by breathing it. They felt their weariness from the journey falling away with every breath, felt strength and vitality flooding back into their bodies, the aches and pains they had accumulated, the small injuries and discomforts that were the constant companions of any traveller, all of those faded and vanished. They felt better than well. They felt renewed. The dwelling to which they were led was not a hall or a fort like those they had known in Ireland, but something else, a structure that seemed to be partly building and partly living growth. Walls that were woven from vines and wood, but were also somehow solid and permanent. A roof that was made of leaves but never shed, never grew thin, never let in rain or wind. Inside, everything was beautiful and comfortable, with soft places to sit and lie, with tapestries on the walls that seemed to depict scenes from stories, though the scenes moved slightly when you looked away and back again, as though the stories were still being told. And there was food, such food as they had never imagined existed. Fruits that burst with flavours they had no words for, combinations of sweet and tart and rich that made their mouths water and their eyes close in pleasure. Meat that was tender and flavourful, though they could not have said what animal it came from. Bread that was soft and warm and seemed to never grow stale. And to drink, there was mead that tasted of flowers and sunlight, wine that carried hints of berries and oak, and something else, something indefinable that was purely of this place. They ate and drank, and with each bite and sip they felt more at home here, more comfortable, more at peace. The women sat with them, and there was laughter and conversation, though afterward none of the men could quite remember. Pleasant, that was all they knew. It had been joyous and comfortable and right. That evening, if it could be called evening, since the light never really changed, becoming neither brighter nor dimmer, but simply remaining that same soft, gentle illumination, there was music. And as they listened, Bran and his men felt something settling over them. A deep contentment, a sense that they had found what they had been looking for without even knowing they were looking for it. This place, this island, this land of the young, it was everything the mysterious woman had promised in her song. It was paradise. It was home. The days passed, though. Days was perhaps the wrong word, since there was no real distinction between day and night, no sunrise or sunset, just that constant, gentle light that made it easy to be active or to rest as the mood took them. Time became fluid, unmeasured, unimportant. There were no schedules here, no obligations, no duties that pressed upon them. They could spend what might have been hours or days sitting beneath the apple trees, talking with the women about philosophy and poetry and the nature of existence. They could wander the paths of the island, discovering new vistas, new groves of trees, new meadows filled with flowers. They could feast whenever they were hungry. And the food never ran out, never became boring, each meal as delightful as the first. Bran found himself drawn to the queen, whose name was something he could never quite pronounce correctly, though she smiled when he tried. They would sit together and talk, and she told him of the history of this place, how it had existed since before mortal memory began, how it was ruled by Manannán MacLear, though he was often away, riding across the waves or tending to his other domains. She told him that Tir na Nog was one of many islands in the Otherworld, each with its own character, and that this one was special, dedicated to beauty and joy and the suspension of time's cruel march. Nothing decays here, she explained, gesturing to the eternal blossoms on the trees. Nothing grows old or sick or worn. The fruit that falls from the trees is immediately replaced by new fruit. The flowers that seem to wilt bloom again the next moment. Even you, all of you who have come here, you have stopped aging from the moment you stepped onto our shore. Look at your hands. Bran looked down at his hands, and he was startled to realize that old scars he had carried for years were gone, faded away as though they had never been. His skin looked younger, smoother. He felt younger, more vital, as though he had returned to the peak of his physical strength. "How long have we been here?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. The queen smiled, a mysterious, knowing smile. "How long do you think it has been?" Bran tried to count the days, but he could not. Time had slipped away from him. It might have been weeks, it might have been months. He genuinely could not say. "I don't know," he admitted. "That is the nature of this place," the queen said. "Time is not absent here, but it moves differently. What feels like a day here might be a year in the world you came from, or it might be only an hour. There is no fixed relationship between time here and time there. We exist, to some degree, outside of time's normal flow. This is part of what makes this place what it is, part of the gift we offer." Bran should have been disturbed by this, but he found that he was not. What did it matter really how time passed? He was happy here. His men were happy. They were fed and comfortable and safe and entertained. They were living in paradise. Why would he want to measure it, to count it, to worry about it? And so the days, if they could be called days, continued to pass. The men of Bran's company each found companionship with the women of the island. These were not relationships that needed to be negotiated or worked at. They simply unfolded naturally, easily, as though they had been meant to be all along. There was no jealousy, no conflict, no disagreement. Everything was harmony, everything was joy. They learned the customs of the island, the songs and the stories. They participated in the festivals that seemed to happen regularly, though on what schedule they could never quite determine. There would be processions through the meadows, dancing that went on for what felt like hours, games of skill and strength that were never competitive, never left anyone feeling lesser, but were pure play, pure delight in movement and ability. Bran learned to play the harp-like instruments, though he had never been musical before. The Queen taught him, her fingers guiding his, and he found that in this place he could make music that was beautiful, that spoke to the heart, that made others smile and sigh with contentment. It was as though all limitations had been lifted here, as though they could become the best versions of themselves without effort, without struggle. And still the time passed, unmeasured and unmeasurable. It was impossible to say how long they had been on the island when one of Bran's men, a warrior who had been among his closest companions back in Ireland, approached him with a troubled expression. This was unusual in itself, since no one seemed troubled here, ever. The peace of the place seemed to smooth away all concerns. "Bran," the man said, "I have been thinking about Ireland." The word Ireland hung in the air between them, and Bran realized with a start that he had not thought about Ireland in a long time. How long? He could not say. He had been so absorbed in the life of the island, and the beauty and the peace and the joy, that his former home had simply slipped from his mind. "What about Ireland?" Bran asked, though part of him did not want to have this conversation, wanted to return to the comfortable forgetfulness that had sustained him here. "I miss it," the man said simply. "I miss the green hills, different from these hills. I miss the rain. I miss the taste of the sea wind, the one from our sea, our Atlantic that we knew. I miss my family. I had a wife, Bran. Do you remember? I had children, and I find that I cannot quite remember their faces anymore, and that troubles me greatly." His words struck Bran like a blow, because they awakened memories that had been sleeping, dormant, almost forgotten. He had a home in Ireland. He had a fort, lands, people who depended on him. He had family, friends, a life that he had simply walked away from when he chose to sail west. How could he have forgotten them so completely? "I want to go back," the man said. "I want to see Ireland again just once. I want to know if they are all right, if they remember me. And then, perhaps I will return here if the Queen allows it. But I cannot stay here forever without at least saying goodbye, without at least letting them know that I am well." Other men, hearing this conversation, gathered around, and it became clear that the first man was not alone in his feelings. Others had been having similar thoughts, similar longings. The paradise of Tir na Nog was wonderful, was beautiful, was everything it had been promised to be, but it was not home. It was not Ireland. And the men, for all that they were content here, found that they were homesick. Bran thought about this carefully. He thought about Ireland, letting himself remember it fully for the first time in what must have been a very long time. He thought about his fort, his land, his people. He thought about the green hills and grey skies, about the rain that fell soft and constant, about the wind from the sea that carried the taste of salt. And he found that he missed it too. He missed the world he had come from, missed it with a sudden fierce longing that surprised him with its intensity. He sought out the Queen and told her of their desire. "We wish to return to Ireland," he said, "not to leave permanently perhaps, but to visit, to see our homeland again, to ensure that all is well there. And then maybe we will return here if you will have us." The Queen's face grew grave, and for the first time since they had arrived, she looked truly sad. "I feared this would come," she said. "It always does eventually. Mortals, no matter how happy they are here, always think of their homeland, always long to return. It is part of what makes you mortal, that connection to the land that birthed you, to the time that you were born into." "Will you allow it?" Bran asked. "Will you let us leave?" "I will not stop you," she said. "This is not a prison. You are free to go as you were free to come. But I must warn you, Bran, son of Feeble, I must tell you what will happen if you return to Ireland, and you must listen to me carefully and heed my words." She took his hands in hers, and her green eyes looked deep into his, and he saw sorrow there, and pity, and something like fear. "Time has passed differently here, as I told you. What has felt to you like perhaps a few months or a year has been much, much longer in Ireland. Centuries, Bran. Centuries have passed in the mortal world while you have been here. Everyone you knew is dead. Everyone you loved has been gone for generations. Ireland has changed. The world has changed. You are legends now. Stories told around fires, tales of men who sailed west and never returned." Bran felt his heart clench with pain. Centuries. The word was almost incomprehensible. "That cannot be," he said. "It has not been that long." "It has been a year at most." "I know it feels that way," the Queen said gently. "That is the nature of this place. Time here is not the same. You have been with us for far longer than it feels, and if you return to Ireland, you will find a world you do not recognize." "Then we will adapt," Bran said. "We will learn the new ways. We will find our place in this changed Ireland." The Queen shook her head. "That is not the only danger. You have been sustained by the magic of this place, by the timelessness of Tir na Nog. If you return to the mortal world, that magic will no longer protect you. And there is one rule, one absolute rule that you must follow if you wish to survive the return. You must not set foot on Irish soil. You must remain in your boats on the water. If any of you touches the soil of Ireland, all the years that you have not aged here will catch up to you in an instant. You will crumble to dust, do you understand?" "Stay in the boats," Bran repeated. "Do not touch the land." "We understand." "Do you?" the Queen asked. "Do you truly?" "It is harder than you think, Bran, to be so close to home and not step onto its shore. The pull of the land is strong. The desire to walk on the earth of your homeland will be nearly overwhelming, but if you give in to it, you will die. I cannot be clearer than that." "We will be careful," Bran promised. "We will heed your warning. But we must go. We must see what has become of Ireland. We must know." The Queen sighed, a sound like wind through leaves. "Then I will not stop you. Take your boats, sail east, find your way back to the Ireland that exists now. But remember what I have told you. Stay in your boats. Do not touch the land. And if you choose to return here afterward, you will be welcome. The thread I gave you will guide you back if you wish to use it. Bran and his men prepared to leave. The women of the island came to see them off, and there were tears, genuine tears of sorrow at the parting. The queen herself helped them load their currachs with provisions for the journey, though she told them they would not be needed, that the magic of the thread would carry them swiftly across the waters that separated the worlds. As they pushed off from the shore, the queen called out one last time. "Remember," she cried, "do not touch the land. Do not set foot on Irish soil." Bran waved to her, holding up the silver thread to show that he would use it to guide them, to keep them safe. And then they began to row, and the island of Tir na Nog faded behind them into mist and memory. The journey back was nothing like the journey out. Where the voyage west had been leisurely, exploratory, full of wonder and strange encounters, the voyage east was swift and direct. The silver thread in Bran's hand seemed to pull them unerringly toward Ireland, guiding them through waters that parted before them and closed behind them, as though the sea itself was helping them return. They passed the island of Joy at some distance, near enough to hear faint echoes of that eerie laughter drifting across the water, and they wondered if Nechtan was still there, still trapped in that endless mirth, or if the centuries that had passed in the mortal world had affected that place too. They did not stop to investigate. They kept rowing, following the thread. Being pulled steadily eastward, the waters began to change as they travelled. The otherworldly shimmer faded gradually, and the sea became more familiar, more like the Atlantic they had known. The strange colours gave way to ordinary blues and greys. The sense of magic that had permeated everything began to thin, to dissipate, until they were sailing on normal water under a normal sky, and they knew they were approaching the boundary between worlds, the threshold they had crossed so long ago. And then, rising from the morning mist, they saw the coast of Ireland. It was Ireland, unmistakably Ireland, with its green hills and rocky shores and the particular quality of light that was like nowhere else in the world. But it also was not the Ireland they had left. Even from the distance of the sea, they could see differences. The shapes of the land were familiar, but there were structures that had not been there before, buildings of a type they did not recognize. The beaches looked different, changed by centuries of storms and tides. As they drew closer to shore, they saw people on the beach. A small crowd had gathered, apparently having spotted the three curraghs approaching from the west. The people were dressed strangely, in clothes of unfamiliar cut and style, and they called out to the boats in words that were Irish but accented differently, structured differently, the language having changed over the centuries they had been gone. Bran stood in the lead currach and called back to the people. "I am Bran," he shouted across the water, "son of Feeble. We have returned from the western sea." There was a moment of silence from the shore, and then voices rose in excited babble. The people were talking among themselves, pointing at the boats, clearly agitated and surprised. Finally, One old man stepped forward and called back across the water, his voice carrying clearly in the still morning air. "Bran, son of Feeble?" That is only an old legend, a story from the ancient times. Bran sailed west centuries ago and never returned. There has been no one of that name alive for longer than the oldest memory. The words struck like physical blows. Centuries. The Queen had warned them, but hearing it confirmed was different. Centuries had passed. Everyone they had known was gone. Dust in graves so old that the graves themselves were lost. The Ireland they had known existed only in stories now, preserved in the memories of bards and the verses of poets. Bran felt a grief so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. He looked at his companions, saw the same shock and sorrow reflected in their faces. They had known, intellectually, that time had passed, but knowing and truly understanding were different things. They had been gone for so long that they had become myths. One of Bran's companions, the same man who had first spoken of homesickness on the island, stood up in his currach. His name was Nechtan too, though not the same Nechtan who had been lost on the island of Joy. This Nechtan looked at the shore with desperate longing. Ireland was so close, just a few yards away, and he had dreamed of it for so long, had longed for it with such intensity. "Bran," Nechtan said, "we should land. We should step onto the shore and speak with these people properly. We should—" "No!" Bran shouted, remembering the Queen's warning. "You heard what she said. We must not set foot on the land. We must remain in the boats." But Nechtan was not listening, or perhaps the pull of Ireland was too strong, overriding reason and memory. "It's just sand," he said. "It's just the beach. It cannot hurt us to stand on our own land again. I must feel Ireland beneath my feet. I must." And before Bran could stop him, before anyone could grab him and hold him back, Nechtan jumped from the currach into the shallow water and waded toward the beach. His feet touched the wet sand at the water's edge, touched the soil of Ireland for the first time in centuries, and what happened then was terrible and swift. Nechtan stopped in his tracks, a look of confusion crossing his face, then horror, then agony. He opened his mouth as though to scream, but no sound came out. And then, before the horrified eyes of his companions and the shocked crowd on the beach, Nechtan began to age. It happened in seconds, time catching up to him all at once, centuries of aging compressed into a few horrible moments. His hair turned white, then fell out, his skin wrinkled and sagged, becoming like old parchment. His body bent, folding in on itself as his bones became brittle and his muscles withered. He collapsed onto the sand, and even as he fell, he continued to age, his flesh drying out, becoming desiccated, turning to leather and then to dust. By the time he hit the ground, Nechtan was dead, and seconds later there was nothing left of him but a small pile of grey dust on the wet sand, quickly scattered by the wind and washed away by the incoming waves. He had lived for centuries in Tir na Nog without aging a day, and then all those years had claimed him in an instant. The Queen's warning had been exactly accurate, exactly true. Touch the land and time would catch up to you. Touch the land and you would die. The men in the boat sat frozen in horror, staring at the spot where Nechtan had stood just moments before. The people on the beach were equally shocked, many of them backing away, making signs against evil magic, clearly frightened by what they had just witnessed. Bran felt cold settle into his bones, a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature of the air. The Queen had warned them. She had been explicit, but Nechtan had not been able to resist the call of home, and it had killed him. And now Bran understood with complete clarity that they could never truly return to Ireland. They could float offshore, they could shout conversations across the water, but they could never walk on Irish soil again. To do so would be to die, instantly and horribly. He looked at his remaining companions, saw his own realization reflected in their faces. They were trapped between worlds, no longer truly mortal, but not truly immortal either, sustained by the magic of Tir na Nog, but unable to remain in the mortal world. "People of Ireland!" Bran called to the crowd on the beach, his voice carrying across the water. "We are who we say we are. We are Bran, son of Feeble, and his companions who sailed west in search of the land of the young. We found it. We dwell there in Tir na Nog, where time moves differently, where the years pass like days. And now we have returned to tell our story, to let you know that the old tales are true, that the Otherworld exists, that the islands beyond the Western Sea are real." The people listened transfixed as Bran told them everything. He described the mysterious woman and her song. He described the silver branch and the voyage west. He described meeting Manannán MacLear, the island of joy, and most of all he described Tir na Nog, the island of women, the paradise where they had dwelled for what felt like a single year but had been centuries. His voice rang out clear across the water, telling the story that would become legend. And when he had finished speaking, one of his men brought forth a wooden tablet, and upon it Bran inscribed their tale in Ogham letters, the ancient script of Ireland, so that their voyage would be remembered, not just in spoken word, but in written form as well. This record he handed to the people on the shore, a gift from the other world to the mortal realm, before they sailed away. When he had finished speaking, there was silence on the beach. Then the old man who had first spoken stepped forward again. "Your tale will be remembered," he called to Bran. "It will be written down. It will become part of our heritage, our knowledge of what lies beyond the Western Sea. You will not be forgotten, Bran, son of Feeble. Your voyage will be sung by bards. Your story will survive. But what will you do now? Will you remain here floating offshore forever, unable to land?" Bran looked at his companions, saw in their faces the same knowledge that had settled into his own heart. They could not stay here. They could not float off Ireland's coast watching a world that had forgotten them, a world where everyone they had known was gone, a world that had moved on without them. They were no longer part of this place, no longer truly Irish in the way they had been. They had become something else, something between mortal and immortal, between this world and the other world. "No," Bran called back, "we will not stay. We will return to the Western Sea, and we will find our way back to Tir na Nog, or we will sail to other islands of the other world, or we will simply sail until the sea claims us. But we cannot remain here. Ireland is no longer our home. We belong to the West now. to the eternal seas, to the lands beyond the horizon. He turned to his men. "Is this your choice as well?" he asked. "Will you sail west with me again? Or would you prefer to try to find some way to remain here, to live on the water offshore if necessary?" To a man, they chose to sail west. Ireland had changed too much. They had changed too much. The only place they truly belonged now was the Otherworld, the realm of magic and timelessness, the place that had become more home than Ireland could ever be again. Bran took the silver thread in his hand, the thread that the Queen had said would guide them back if they wished to return. He felt it pull gently, pointing west, back toward the horizon where sky and sea met, back toward the islands beyond mortal ken. "People of Ireland," he called one last time, "remember us. Remember that we sailed west and found what we sought. Remember that the other world is real, that Tir na Nog exists, that the old tales and old beliefs are true. And if any among you are called as I was called, if any of you hear the music and see the silver branch and feel the pull of the western sea, know that the journey is real and the islands await. Farewell." With that, the men took up their oars and turned the curraghs away from Ireland's shore, pointing their prows once again toward the west. The people on the beach watched them go, watched until the boats became small specks on the horizon, watched until they vanished completely into the morning mist, and then they turned and went back to their lives, carrying the story with them, carrying the memory of the day that Bran, son of Feeble, returned from legend and then sailed back into it. The journey back into the Western Sea was different yet again from both the voyage out and the brief return. There was no exploration this time, no sense of wonder at new discoveries. There was only purpose and direction. The silver thread pulling them steadily forward, the magic of Tir na Nog reaching out across the waves to guide them home, if home was the right word, for a place that was not the place of their birth, but had become the only place they could exist. The men rode in silence for a long time, each lost in his own thoughts. They were processing what they had experienced, the shock of seeing Ireland so changed, the horror of watching Nechtan age and die in seconds, the realization that they could never truly return to the world of their birth. They were in between now, neither fully mortal nor fully otherworldly, sustained by magic but aware of their mortal origins, connected to both worlds but truly belonging to neither. Gradually, as they rode, the waters began to change around them. The ordinary grey-green of the Atlantic gave way again to those stranger hues, those impossible colours that had no names, shimmering blues and silvers and greens that spoke of magic and timelessness. The air became warmer, softer, carrying hints of flowers and honey, the sense of weight, the sense of time pressing forward with inexorable force that began to lift from their shoulders. They were crossing back into the other world, back into that realm where time moved differently, where the normal laws of the universe were more like suggestions than absolute rules. Bran wondered as he rode what their lives would be like now. Would they return to Tir na Nog and simply resume the existence they had left? Would the Queen welcome them back? Or would they voyage to other islands, exploring the otherworld more thoroughly, becoming true travellers of those mystical seas? Or would they simply sail forever, existing in the liminal space between worlds, neither here nor there, neither fully committed to the other world, nor able to return to the mortal realm? He thought about the nature of longing, of homesickness, of how the human heart seems constitutionally unable to be fully satisfied with what it has. They had lived in paradise, in literal paradise, with every need met and every comfort provided, and yet they had longed for Ireland. And now, having seen what Ireland had become, having learned that they could never truly return there, he found himself thinking of it with a longing perhaps even stronger than what had driven them to leave Tir na Nog. The Ireland of his memory, the Ireland that had existed when he left, was gone forever, but the memory of it remained, golden and perfect and impossible to reclaim. Was this the nature of the mortal condition? To always long for what cannot be had? To find that satisfaction slips away even in the moment of achieving it? Perhaps this was what separated mortals from the gods, this constant restlessness, this inability to simply be content with the present moment. The gods and the inhabitants of the other world seemed able to exist in eternal now, unchanging and satisfied. But mortals carried time within them, carried the awareness of past and future, and that awareness made true contentment nearly impossible. And yet, Bran thought, perhaps that restlessness was also a gift in its own way. The contentment of Tir na Nog was beautiful, but it was also static. Nothing truly happened there. Days passed, but they were all essentially the same day, an eternal repetition of pleasure and ease. Nothing was risked, nothing was lost, but also nothing was truly gained. There was no growth, no change, no development. You could spend centuries there, and while you would not age, you would not really live either. Not in the sense of experiencing the full range of what life could offer. The mortal world, for all its pain and loss and inevitable decay, had something that the other world lacked. It had stakes, it had meaning, it had the bittersweet poignancy that comes from knowing that everything is temporary, that every moment is precious, because it will never come again. The food on Tir na Nog was delicious, but it could not match the sweetness of a meal shared with loved ones, knowing it might be the last time you would all be together. The beauty of the eternal apple trees could not match the beauty of apple blossoms in Ireland. So brief, so fleeting, beautiful precisely because they would fall and be gone. They were caught between these two worlds now, Bran and his men, able to exist in the other world, but carrying within them the mortal awareness of time and loss and meaning. Perhaps that was their destiny, to be bridges between the worlds, to carry knowledge and stories from one to the other, to remind the immortals what it meant to be mortal, and to remind mortals what lay beyond the horizon. The silver thread continued to pull them westward, and they followed it trustingly. The sea around them was calm, the waves gentle, rocking the curraghs like cradles. The sky above was the soft twilight that was neither day nor night. the eternal gloaming that seemed to characterize the other world. And gradually, imperceptibly, the men found their hearts lightening. The grief of leaving Ireland, the horror of Nechtan's death, those began to fade, not forgotten, but becoming less immediate, less overwhelming. The peace of the other world was settling over them again, the magic working its gentle influence on their minds and hearts. Ahead, emerging from mist that seemed to be made of light, they saw land. An island, green and beautiful, with those characteristic apple trees, visible even from a distance, their branches heavy with blossoms and fruit. Was it Tir na Nog? Was it another island? They could not tell from this distance, but the silver thread was pulling them toward it, and they trusted that pull, trusted that they were being guided where they needed to go. As they drew closer, they saw figures on the shore, women waiting for them, and at their center, distinguished by her golden hair and the wisdom in her eyes, was the Queen. She had known they would return. Perhaps she had always known. Perhaps she had watched their journey in the still waters of some magical pool, had seen them reach Ireland, had seen Nechtan's death, had known they would choose to return rather than remain in a world that was no longer theirs. The curraghs touched the shore with barely a whisper, sliding onto the smooth white stones as though they had never left. Bran and his men climbed out, and this time they did not hesitate to step onto the land. This was not Ireland, where time would catch up to them. This was the other world, where they were protected, where they could exist outside of time's normal flow. The Queen came forward and took Bran's hands in hers. "Welcome home," she said simply. "I'm glad you returned. I was afraid the pull of Ireland might be too strong, that you might find some way to remain there, even knowing it would eventually kill you. But you made the wise choice. You belong here now. This is your home." "Is it?" Bran asked. "Can the other world truly be home for mortals? We are not gods. We are not truly of this place." "You are not mortals anymore," the Queen said gently, "not in the way you were. You have lived for centuries without aging. You have died and been reborn, in a sense, released from your connection to the mortal world. You are something new now, something between. And yes, this can be your home if you choose to make it so. Or you may voyage to other islands, other realms. The other world is vast, and there are many places within it, but you will always be welcome here. Always have a place in Tir na Nog, for as long as you wish to remain." Bran looked at his companions, saw in their faces a tentative hope, a cautious acceptance. They had tried to go back, and they had learned that going back was impossible. The only direction was forward, into whatever future awaited them in this strange, beautiful, timeless place. "Then we will stay," Bran said. "For now, at least. We will stay and learn what it means to exist between worlds, to carry both mortal and immortal nature within us, and perhaps in time we will understand what purpose there is in our existence, what role we are meant to play." The Queen smiled. "You already play a role," she said. "You are the ones who remember. You are the ones who carry the stories of the mortal world into the other world, and the stories of the other world back to the mortal world even if you can only shout them across the water now. You are the bridge. You are the memory. You are the proof that both worlds exist and that the boundary between them can be crossed. That is no small thing, Bran, son of Feeble. That is a purpose worthy of a life, even an immortal life. And with that she led them back into the island, back to the dwelling that had been prepared for them, back to the eternal feast and the endless music and the timeless existence of Tir na Nog. But they were changed now, Bran and his men. They had seen both worlds fully, had experienced both the paradise of the Otherworld and the bitter reality of time's passage in the mortal realm. They could never be purely content again, would always carry with them a certain melancholy, a certain awareness of what they had lost, even as they appreciated what they had gained. They were between, and they would remain between for as long as they chose to exist. And perhaps that was the true meaning of their voyage, the real lesson of their journey. That meaning exists not in staying in one place, not in perfect contentment or complete satisfaction, but in the journey itself, in the travelling between worlds, in the carrying of stories and memories from one realm to another, in the awareness of both time and timelessness, both mortality and immortality. They were the voyagers, eternal and eternally restless, at home on the sea between worlds, finding their purpose not in arrival but in the journey itself. Bran sat on the shore of Tir na Nog, the silver branch beside him, and looked out at the western sea. Somewhere beyond those waters lay other islands, other realms, other wonders to discover. Somewhere beyond the horizon the other world continued, vast and mysterious and endless. And somewhere too, in a different direction, lay Ireland, the land of his birth, changed beyond recognition, but still existing, still turning through its days and seasons, still the root from which he had grown, even if he could never return to it. He was Bran, son of Feeble, who had sailed west in search of wonder and had found it, who had lived in paradise and left it, who had tried to return home and learned that home was both everywhere and nowhere, who existed now in the between spaces, the liminal zones, the boundaries between worlds. His story would be told, would be written down, would be passed from generation to generation in the mortal world. And here in the other world, he would live it, would continue living it, would be the story even as the story was being told elsewhere. The sun that was not quite a sun set on the horizon that was not quite a horizon, painting the sky with colours that had no names. The waves rolled in, gentle and eternal, carrying whispers of other shores, other times, other possibilities. And Bran sat and watched, neither happy nor sad, but something more complex, something more true, aware of everything he had gained and everything he had lost, living in the precious, painful, beautiful space between. This is the voyage of Bran, son of Feeble. This is the story of a man who sailed west and found paradise and discovered it was not enough, who tried to return home and learned that home was something that could not be reclaimed, who ended up existing between worlds, carrying both within him, belonging fully to neither and partially to both. And if you listen carefully on quiet nights when the wind comes from the west and carries the scent of salt and flowers, perhaps you can still hear them out there, Bran and his companions, sailing the waters between worlds, voyaging through the eternal mists, searching for something that may not exist or may be everywhere at once. The voyagers eternal, the bridge between the mortal and the divine, between time and timelessness, between the green hills of Ireland and the golden shores of Tir na Nog. Let their voyage lull you now toward sleep. Let the gentle rocking of their curraghs become the rocking that carries you toward dreams. Let the music of the silver branch sing you into rest. Let the western sea roll you gently into the peaceful darkness, where all boundaries dissolve, where you can exist for a time in that same between space that Bran found, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, neither fully here nor fully there, but somewhere in the beautiful middle, the liminal zone, the threshold between worlds. Sleep now and dream of islands beyond the horizon. Dream of waters that are also meadows, of trees that bear fruit and blossoms together, of music that heals and sustains. Dream of voyages that never end, and homes that can never be reclaimed. Dream of the sweet sorrow of existence, the bittersweet beauty of being caught between, of carrying within yourself both the mortal and the immortal, both time and timelessness, both memory and forgetting. Sleep now, voyager. Sleep and sail west in your dreams. The silver branch is singing, the tide is turning, the way is open, the islands are waiting, just beyond the edge of vision, just past the border of sleep, in that mystical realm where stories never die and journeys never truly end. Close your eyes, let go, sail on. If you enjoyed this journey into Celtic mythology, please consider subscribing to Myth Drifting for more sleep-friendly deep dives into the myths and legends that have shaped human understanding. Let these ancient stories guide you into peaceful rest, their wisdom seeping into your dreams like morning dew on ancient shores. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you to the land of the young.